Ooh. Man. So, lay down here, cause I'm lazy. I'm a lazy piece of shit, right? Oh. Alright. Let's talk about Zelda. Everybody, I'm pretty sure anybody that you talk to, or anybody that talks about Zelda, that's a Zelda fan from when they were a kid, growing up, playing the first one and the second one, the Super Nintendo one, and then the Nintendo 64. I'm pretty sure everybody will tell you that the worst Zelda games are those CDI Zelda games. People actually try to say that these games don't exist. Oh, the CDI games never happened. Which, unfortunately, they did happen, okay? And I agree, they're complete garbage. They're not even piece of shit. Each one of them is a whole shit, okay? I'm not denying that. People got all excited over Ocarina of Time, which I get, okay? Ocarina of Time was a great game, okay? For the Nintendo, it was a great game, and then Majora's Mask, and Wind Waker and everything else, okay? That's fine, okay? But for the longest time, I've always said that the Ocarina of Time, the Legend of Zelda, the Ocarina of Time, was one of the worst Zelda games made, okay? And I'm not talking about the game itself, okay? The game itself is a masterpiece. It was great, okay? The reason I hate that Ocarina of Time game is because of what it inspired in future games, okay? I'm talking about, notably, the Assassin's Creed games, okay? Where they have that stupid fucking parkour control scheme where, you're... The biggest problem with the Assassin's Creed games is when you're running around, you're doing like a foot race or something, or you're trying to catch some asshole that ran off with like two pieces of 2 pennies or whatever the fucking case may be. But the problem with Assassin's Creed, it could have been a good series, but instead they fuck it up with the parkour controls, which means that when you're running through like an alley trying to chase some asshole, you're running. Oh shit! I just got snagged on a wooden box, and now I have to climb over the box just because I ran into it. Why can't I just walk around? No. You have to stop and gradually climb up this box while this guy's running away. It's the worst control scheme I've ever heard of, okay? Now, how does this Ocarina of Time come into that? Well, Ocarina of Time, that game kind of, inspired that. Ocarina of Time did it well, okay? There were like races in the game, like foot races and whatnot, but it never seemed like the control was an issue for that game. It had the parkour controls, which actually worked well for that game. that's when the parkour, if you don't know what that is, that's when like, for example, you jump when the game tells you you can jump, as opposed to, pressing a button and then just jumping in the air and doing it that way. No, the game, if the game wants you to jump, then you're allowed to jump. Or, you get and the way they do that is usually if you're like close to the edge and there's like a platform right across, then yeah, all you have to do is walk up to the thing, up to the edge, and you can just auto jump across. Okay, that's where I'm talking about the parkour system, or where you can only do certain actions when the game wants you to do it. For example, like Assassin's Creed, like when you could jump in the game, but it's like some stupid little jump you could just do by pressing a button. But no, there's actually another thing where you can actually jump up and like climb up a building. And the way they do that in Assassin's Creed is the most asinine way, which is pretty much, it's the same button. You hold the button to run. You hold the button and let's see. Let me show you kiddies how it's done. Here's a PS4 controller. So let's say this button. You hold this button, and then you press that up to run. Okay. Well, while you're pressing it like that, okay, you're in a foot race. You go woo 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 woo, and then you end up like getting too close to a building that you can climb up, and it's like, oh fuck, I just climbed up the building instead of keep running. That's how they fucked that up, okay? Now, Ocarina of Time is a great game in itself, okay? But what I'm trying to say is, as good of a game Ocarina of Time was, it did inspire some shit, okay? Like Assassin's Creed and whatnot, okay? It's almost like, let's say, another example of this phenomenon would be like the first Halo game, okay? The first Halo game, to me personally, I'm not into Halo too much. But people are, and it's an all-right game, but it's pretty much just a shooter like any other, to me at least. But what made Halo the big thing is that you can only carry 2 weapons at the same time, and you have the recharging health bar or shield or whatever you like to call it. Now, if you recall, this is like if you look at older games like Doom, like older first-person shooters like Wolfenstein or Doom or Duke Nukem or whatever. Those games are great, and you could carry like as many weapons as you had. You find like the shotgun, and then you find the rocket launcher and all that other happy horse shit. There was never any game where you actually had to choose between 1 or 2 weapons to carry around, and you have to put down the weapon or whatever. That was never the case in those old first-person shooters, and that was actually a good thing. Okay, the recharging health bar, it was never like that until Halo came around, and now all games are doing it. All you have to do is just sit still for a couple seconds, and your health recharges. Okay. It was never like that in the old Doom games or Wolfenstein or Duke Nukem. You either had to find health or health packs or whatnot, and it worked, and they were great games. Dated of sure, but they were still great. But now Halo comes around, and now, oh my god, now everybody has to have the feature where you can only carry 2 guns at a time, and you have to have that health bar that recharges. Sorry, this is gonna be a long one, so I have to have my drink. Look at, I'm drinking water out of an extra large Slurpee cup. Ugh, I should be drinking friggin' Jägermeister talking about this, but I'm not. So that's my problem with that. Once a game gets popular enough, then every game has to start doing it, and that's my problem. And for the longest time, I thought that the Zelda CDI games were worse. And when Ocarina of Time came out, I thought it was a pretty good game. And then when I seen games start copying that bad style of control, like Assassin's Creed, then I'm like, okay, this is almost like that Zelda control, but it's done so horribly. And I think if Ocarina of Time was never made, we would never have that bad control. So I'm looking back at Ocarina, I'm like, why? Why did you have to become so popular that now everyone has to mimic that style? So I grew up as a Zelda fan. I played through the first one many times. I played through the second one many times. I laugh at the Jesse movie, because he's over there playing a Zelda 2 and he's fucking sucking at it, and I'm thinking, dude, you fucking suck at Zelda. Put the game down and seek help, So I intend to make a video of me doing a run through of Zelda 2 in the future, but not today. Just to school Jesse Gilbert in the, what do you call it, in Zelda 2, because he sucks. He can't get past those jumping cats or whatever the hell they are. I don't even know what the hell they are. They're just like jumping cats. I don't know. I can't wait to see him get a little bit farther and get completely frustrated when he has to fight the guys with the boomerangs, or those other guys. I call them the Tim the Toolman Taylor neighbor guys, because there's a part in the second Zelda game where you gotta run through a side-scrolling thing, and there's like a big fence or something, and these guys just pop their heads out and throw friggin' rocks at you, and they're real hard to dodge. But once you get past that part, it's easy enough. And you get to like the Valley of Death, I think it's called. That's when the game starts getting hard. That's like right before you get to the Great Palace, and you have to fight the Thunderbird, which is pretty easy, and then Shadow Link, or Dark Link, or whatever you like to call him. He's pretty much the easiest boss in the game once you know what you gotta do. Okay, there's a trick to beating him, and he's not as hard as you really think. So getting back on point, my favorite Zelda game was probably the Super Nintendo one, Zelda: Link to the Past. I think that was one of my favorites. It was good graphics. It was a good game overall. It was pretty much a masterpiece. I think the second favorite one would probably be the first one, the very first one. And the third, maybe like the second one would probably be the My third favorite. I don't give the second one too much hassle just because it's a side scroller. I'm not one of those people that, that's gonna give a game like. I'm not the one of those type of people that's gonna like shit on a game just because it's not like the last. As long as it's done right, I don't really care. Like, some people hate the second Zelda, but I loved it. Some people hate it just because it's a side scroller, and the last one wasn't. Well, you gotta remember something. Back then, there was only two Zelda games. There was the second one, which was a side scroller, and then there was the first one, which is top down. So you gotta think. You gotta remember something. There wasn't like a standard in place yet. It's the same thing with the Castlevania games. First one was good, and people hated the second one, and the second one was an alright game too. It's just that it's a little different, so people are going to get pissed off about it. I mean, to be honest, the second Castlevania game is like, it's you can think of it as like an early form of, the Metroidvania style games. It's the first Metroidvania Castlevania game ever made. You can think of it that way. Sure, there's cryptic shit in there, but I think that's what makes the game good. Same with the second Zelda game. There's cryptic shit in there, and to me, that makes the game good. I like being able to, figure things out. I like being able to, find my items and being able to use the items to get other places, or trying to figure out how to get past the wall in Castlevania, or how to open up a dungeon or Palace 6, I think it is, where you actually have to stand like in between those rocks and then blow your whistle and then it comes up. Remember that? I like doing that. That's not a problem for me, and I'm not going to shit on a game because it's too cryptic or whatever. Which brings me to another point. Remember how I said that the CDI games were the worst, and then after like Assassin's Creed and all that shit came out, I thought Ocarina of Time was worse just because it inspired Assassin's Creed. I know it sounds stupid, but... And I said my favorite Zelda game was probably A Link to the Past. Well, Link to the Past... I'm very disappointed. In fact, I'm very disappointed in Nintendo at this point. And I have found the absolute worst Zelda game that tops the CDI games. Oh yeah, I'm going there. I found the absolute worst that tops the CDI games. And I give Ocarina of Time shit just because it inspired it, but if we're just gonna go by the games, Ocarina of Time was a great game. Okay, too bad it inspired the other games, but as for its own game, it's a great game. And Link to the Past was a great game, my favorite one. So I have here the absolute worst Zelda game ever created. And here it is. Oh my god. Looking at this stupid fucking cover, Makes me just want to fucking shit on it. So, I'm really fucking pissed off, and I really don't want to talk about this. How do you fuck up Zelda this bad? Zelda, A Link Between Worlds is, for the Nintendo 3DS, is the absolute bottom of the barrel shit. It's the absolute worst of the bunch. I'm sorry, it's worse than the CDI games, okay? And I just went there, okay? First off, who came up with the idea of having to rent all your items that you have to use throughout the game? Who came up with that ingenious idea? So, was finding the items in the dungeons not good enough? Like, I don't get it. Why am I buying the hook shot? Why am I buying shit that I have to find, that I should be finding in the dungeons? Why is it that in the beginning of the game, all the items that I need for the game are already available? You just need enough money to no, you don't even buy them. You rent them. Like, what the shit is that? When you die, you lose everything. You lose all your hook shots and your bombs and your bow and arrow. You have to go back to the rabbit dude and rent your shit over again. Who came up with this? Who the hell came up with this idea? Who thought that, oh, well, you know, people don't like going through dungeons, you know. This game's for hardcore Zelda fans. You know, we made it in a style that, you know, older Zelda fans would love. You know, it looks just like A Link to the Past, you know. So hardcore gamers that grew up with A Link to the Past are going to love A Link to the World because it has that same feel to it. It has like the same, it's pretty much like the same game, except for it's pretty much like the same graphics. A little updated, but whatever. You know, but no. You can't discover your items anymore. Instead, you have to rent them from a rabbit that somehow gets in your house. And yeah, I know the Zelda games have their quirkiness, but this goes beyond quirky. I'm not even against the rabbit dude, okay? Just the fact that you have to rent your items. You can't, like the dungeons, okay, like, you know how, like, in most Zelda games, you know how, like, in, like, every Zelda game, you go through a dungeon, there's always, you know, you get the map, the compass, keys, the big key, or whatever the fuck it's called, then you get, what do you call it, you get a treasure for that dungeon. And that treasure, you know, it's like the boomerang, or it's the bow. Okay? It's like the bow and arrow, and it's like, what's the hook shot, or whatever you get. Whatever the fuck you get, whatever, I don't know. You know, you get, like, the mirror, or whatever, and it, you know, now, it's like, the dungeons have no treasure. No, you know what it is? Now you have to go and buy, or you don't even buy them now. You rent the hook shot. You rent a bow and arrow. Like, what kind of shit is this? This isn't cool. I like that. I liked it better when you can actually go and find these things. It's to me Zelda's almost like a Metroid game in a sense because you go through a dungeon. Let's say you go through a dungeon and you find the hook shot in the dungeon. Okay, well then now you have to use the hook shot to get other places. Use a hook shot to get other places in the dungeon, which is acceptable. And then after you're done with that dungeon, then you go back into the overworld, and now now shit opens up to you. Now you can use a hook shot to get across the river, and then you can find like the heart piece that you've been looking at the entire game. Now you can get it because you have the hook shot now. And then next dungeon you go to, now you have to use a hook shot to get in the dungeon. And you have to go through there and find your next treasure, which is, I don't know, I'm just saying, a bow and arrow. Okay, fine. So then you get the bow and arrow, and then you use that throughout the dungeon. And then you get out, after you beat the boss, you get your little heart, you get your extra life, or your heart, or whatever. You get out of the dungeon, and, now you can use your bow and arrow for shit now, Maybe there was like some switch on the wall or something that you couldn't reach with, or whatever. So you shoot your bow and arrow at it, and now you can hit that switch and it does something cool. That's what I like. Okay, I don't like having all my weapons available to me at the start of the game. Okay? You just have to have enough money for them all. That's bullshit, okay? Like I said before, Zelda's almost like a Metroid game in the sense that, it's like Metroid, you have to jump. You get the double jump, now you can jump higher. You get the screw attack, which lets you cross distances or whatever. That's cool, okay? Imagine if there's a game like Metroid, if there's like a Metroid game where it's called Metroid, you're playing as Samus, you have the whole suit on, the whole bit, the beginning of the game you come down in that that green, I don't know, I'm colorblind, but it's like a greenish yellow ship thing. She comes out of the top of it, and you can use the ship to save your game like all the other games, but instead of going around and finding your ball or the roll bomb or whatever, or the rolling ball thing, or finding the missiles, or the double jump, instead of all that, instead you have to go around killing monsters. They drop like some form of currency. Then you have to keep going back to your ship in order to purchase the bombs and the ball and the double jump. And to me, that's kind of stupid. Like, imagine a Metroid game where you had to do that. Like, that's not Metroid. That's like any other game that's out there now. That's not Metroid. That's something stupid, okay? You should not have to purchase. You know what I'm saying? It's like if you're playing a Metroid game and everything's available to you right in the beginning. Like, that doesn't make much sense now, does it? And then you have to, instead of like going out and finding the jump, or finding the ball or the bombs or the missiles or the screw attack or whatever, now all you have to do It's all available to you in the beginning if you have enough points or money or whatever for those items. It's just not the same as going out and exploring and doing it that way. If that's what I'm trying to say, you know. And that's bullshit, okay? The way a Zelda, A Link Between Worlds works is like that. Okay? All your items that you would normally find in a dungeon are all available to you at the start of the game. You just have to have enough rupees to buy. No, you don't even buy your items. You rent them. And the kicker is that right now I'm at the second dungeon of this game, okay? And I bought I can't stop saying bought because it's like the first thing that comes to mind. I rented all my items. Okay? I rented them all. And now every time you die, you have to go back to the beginning to go and rent those items again. Instead of, you know how most, you know how like the other Zelda games you go, if you die you start at the dungeon beginning and you have all your items again. And so you keep your items. Now you can't even do that because you need like the hook shot to get through, you know, the dungeons and whatnot. But this, every time you die, you actually have to go back to the guy to rent your shit over again. And I hope this is not. I repeat, I hope this is not the style that Nintendo is gonna go for every other Zelda game out there. Okay? If this is gonna be the style, I'm ditching Nintendo completely. Okay? I believe that this piece of shit here was an attempt at Nintendo to say fuck you to its loyal fan base. That's the way I see it. I'm really disappointed. And, you know, you could argue that the CDI games were probably the worst games, and you're probably right. But the CDI games were never supposed to be great. Okay, they weren't even supposed to be good. They were supposed to be bad, okay? And everybody that you talk to will tell you that the CDI games are horrendous, okay? And there's no denying that. A Link Between Worlds, okay? You know, you see it on the shelf, you look at it, you look at the back, and you're like, ooh, this looks awesome. It's the classic style. It's, you know, it looks like it can be a really good game. And you expect it to be a good game because you played all the other Zeldas and they were all good except for the CDI games. And you'd expect it to be a great game because it's Nintendo and it's Zelda. And the piece of shit got like 50 awards and all this other shit. So, you know, it has to be good, right? And everyone else is telling you it's good. You buy that game off the shelf and you put it in your fucking 3DS and you turn it on and you know, it looks promising enough until What? Now I have to rent all my items. And that's the fatal flaw in this game, okay? The whole game would have been perfect had it just been like any other Zelda game. It worked for every other Zelda game. Why change it up now? You know, this is not an improvement, you know. You know, sometimes stripping a game down works in its favor, okay? Look at the Resident Evil games, okay? The first one was great, you know. I like the puzzle solving. The second one, same thing, great, you know. The controls were a little fucked up, but who cares? They were great games. Third one was great. Fourth game was excellent, and I liked what they did. You know, they stripped down the puzzle solving. Oh. They stripped down the puzzle solving and everything else. And someone downstairs knocking. Just ring the goddamn doorbell. Okay, so anyway, they stripped down like so now it's pretty much just like a shooter, and it worked for Resident Evil. There was very little puzzles, but it's okay because it was actually a good, fun game. And Resident Evil 4 is probably like one of the better ones, okay? Resident Evil 5, not as good. Resident Evil 6 was a piece of shit, though. What's going on? Okay, so I just lost my train of thought here. But it's like you expect it to be good. You expect that the Link Between Worlds to be good. But even though it looks like a Link to the Past and it plays like Link to the Past, you have to remember it's not Link to the Past, okay? What? I don't know what's going on down there. But yeah, Link Between Worlds sucks ass.